here. Hello, and welcome to Herb Corner with Jen and Mary. This is our second installment of our program, our monthly program, where we talk about herbs, both for well-being as well as for cooking. And I am joined, again, my name is Mary Bear Shannon, and I am joined by my colleague in the reference department, Jennifer Kuhns. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone.
And you may notice that we are actually not broadcasting from our homes this time. We're actually in the building and have been we were getting ready and are now doing curbside pickup here at the library for people who want to get hold of some actual books. Of course, you can also return your books to our drop as well. And the big news is that we are starting next week, we are moving to some evening hours. So our normal evenings that we are open, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, will be open until 8. So people who want to pick up their curbside items can do that until 8, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then right after the 4th of July weekend, we won't be open that Saturday, but the next Saturday, we will be open for Saturday hours. So we're really excited that we're starting to expand our reach and our service to our community. So starting next Monday, you can come and pick up items in the evening. So again, you just go to our website. When you want to order some books, you can fill out the form, or you can give us a call every day, Monday through Friday, between 10 and 5, we can fulfill your orders. So with that business out of the way, we'd like to talk about herbs. And Jennifer and I are both real advocates and have a passion for herbs and what they can do for us, and also just the process of growing herbs, but also how they can help us both in mind and body and spirit. And Jennifer, I know you were gonna start us off today about what you've been kind of working with and thinking about with herbs. So why don't you get started?
Okay, hi everyone. Yes, Mary and I are both in the same building, but in different parts of the building to properly socially distance. And so we're glad to be here with you. So today, I'm going to talk about the 2 herbs that I had I highlighted in our last presentation, which were stinging nettle and oat tops, or milky oat tops. And what I have done is I made an infusion. The last presentation I talked about different ways of preparing herbs. And one of the easiest ways if you have fresh or dried herbs is to make an infusion, which is basically where you steep the herbs in hot water. Or it can even be cool water. It can be boiling, cool, hot, warm, and you steep it for a period of time, and then you have your infusion and you strain it, or you can put it in bags if you want. But I have some.
Jennifer, we probably want to start again.
Oh, let me, yes. Thank you, Mary, for reminding me. Yep. So before we get too involved in the herbal preparation, we just want to give you a disclaimer that we are not health professionals. I'm not a professional medical practitioner or herbalist. So I just have an interest, and I've read a lot about it, and I've looked at some research, but that doesn't make me able to prescribe for anyone, let alone myself. So I'm, the herbs that I'm talking about are basically food grade, and it's not meant to prescribe anything for you. I'm just showing you what
consult your doctor, right?
Consult your doctor.
Okay, great.
If you ever want to use any of the herbs that I'm talking about, I strongly suggest that you check with your healthcare practitioner or doctor before doing so.
Okay. So should we get started? I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Okay. So what is the difference? You talked about this last time. What's the difference between an infusion and a tea? Because I mean, most of us are pretty pretty familiar with tea, but you differentiated that last time. So what's the difference?
Yeah, so a tea is actually a type of infusion. An infusion is when you steep anything in water or liquid. So that's the simple answer, is that if you have a tea bag, it has some sort of thing in it, and you put it in water and you let it steep, and you let the thing that whatever in the bag kind of just seep out. Or sometimes there's loose tea, so you have your dried or fresh plant material, and you just put it in any kind of vessel and you pour water on it and just let it sit there.
Okay. So you were going to talk about nettle and oat tops, and I know you talked about it last time, but maybe you could remind us again why you like these two so much.
Yeah, they were actually prescribed to me by a woman, a nurse practitioner who also is a specialist in herbs. And I was having some physical and digestive and also some anxiety things going on. And she thought that these two herbs would be very good for that. And having, not instead of having a supplement, like a pill with a powder in it, just like using the plants themselves. And I always feel like that's a little bit of a safer way to use it anyway, especially if I get it from a source that I trust as opposed to going out and foraging. So so the reason I like them is they're very rich in, like most greens, they're very rich in minerals and vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin K. And vitamin K is important for bone health, particularly, and also with blood clotting is very important. Which again, you want to consult with your doctor, because if you're on any blood clotting medication or any kind of medication that has to do with blood, you want to be careful with taking too many of these herbs. So they also contain polyphenols, which can work as antioxidants in your body. Some studies show an association between the consumption of both oat tops and nettle, that they can help with blood sugar control. And one study suggests that nettle contains some kind of compound that mimics insulin in your body. That traditionally, when you talk about herbs and you say traditional use, that means that over time, writings from 100, 200, 300, and over that years ago will, like diaries, medical, primary sources will have writings about how certain herbs were used to treat certain disorders. So when I say traditional use, like traditionally this has been used for rheumatic kind of complaints, inflammation or pain. The oat tops have been traditionally used for anxiety, or if you feel weak, you're recovering from an illness. Of course, the food, the oats themselves have been shown recently to help with cholesterol control and blood sugar regulation. And a lot of contemporary herbalists use milky oat tops and the straw, which is the stalk, because if, like what we have some slides later, but so the oats grow like on a stalk, and then there are little seeds that come up that are connected to the stalks. And the milky oat tops are the immature seeds. When the seeds mature, they become like oat groats, or like a grain that then you can eat, like Scottish oats, or if you cook it long enough, like Scottish oats or Irish oats. If it's pressed and rolled, then that's just your rolled oats. So the milky oat tops is the sort of immature seed, but you can also eat the stalk, which is called oat. A lot of people call it oat straw. And and that's been used for digestive issues too, the oat straw and the milky oat tops. So.
Okay. Do you have slides yet, or should we I've got another question for you, but
yeah, I don't know if we need to go to the slides, but yeah, keep asking me. It's fine.
Great. So what kind of research can be found out about these two herbs?
So there's research, you can do, if you did an internet search, you'll find studies. I like to look at the studies themselves and not necessarily the articles about the studies, because you'll find a lot of I want to say resources, but vendors that will talk about the herbs. But I try to shy away from places that are selling the item, and I want to look at something that's independent information about the herb. And there are different places that you can find online, and it's important to think. Sometimes there'll be a list of traditional uses which don't necessarily have research behind them. That doesn't mean that there isn't some use or truth to that. It's just to keep that in mind. But then there's actual research, and you can figure that out by having a librarian, a reference librarian sort of mind, and looking to see what your search results are that come up, and you want to look for something that's from the National Institutes of Health or some other research body. And so I found some research papers that have been written over the past 20, 30 years about these two herbs. And many of the studies are done in vitro, which means in a test tube or in a petri dish, where they take human or animal tissue and they experiment with the herbs and see what effects they have on the tissue. Or some of them are in vivo. So that means animal studies or sometimes human studies. Oh, Amy? I mean, not Amy. Mary, I can't hear you.
So here's the ins and outs of broadcasting. I had myself muted because I have somebody in our parking lot who is shoveling something. So I was a little concerned about it distracting our conversation. So I had myself muted. We talked a little bit about this last time, but the difference between using dried and fresh herbs, and why would you prefer one over the other? I kind of talked about it with cooking, but I'd love to hear your take on it for well-being.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the same with cooking in terms of storage. Like if it's dried, you can store it for a lot longer. Fresh, you can't really, it's perishable, so you can't really have to use it right away. So there's that part, which is also the same in cooking. Sometimes there's a different nutritional profile for a dried herb rather than a fresh herb. So like the vitamins, and particularly like vitamin C, which is very perishable, if you pick a fresh herb right away and eat it, you'll get a lot of that vitamin C. But if it's sitting around, it'll degrade very quickly. And I think if it's dried or cooked, you might not get as much vitamin C. So there's better, it changes in terms of the bioavailability of nutrients in the herb and the compounds sometimes. So, and nettle in particular, which is one of the herbs I'm going to talk about today, you don't want to eat fresh or even touch when it's fresh, because it's called stinging nettle for a reason. There are these tiny little hairs that are, I remember the first time I encountered nettle, I was about 9 years old, and I had no idea what happened. It just looked like a leaf to me, and then I had all these little feelings on my hands. So that is
my son actually is been working in people's yards this summer and came across it yesterday, and his hand is really swollen today because he touched stinging nettle. So I can attest because it's very swollen.
Yes, it's very uncomfortable. And so with nettle, when you dry it or process it in any way, like cooking or drying completely renders it harmless. Like you no longer have those stings. But you definitely don't want to be, you don't want to touch it. You certainly don't want to eat it. And what was I going to say? If there's anything
about oats, any senses about the oats that drying versus fresh?
Right. So the oats, I think I talked about that earlier about how the oats, when they're left on the stalk to dry, and then I don't know how they're processed to make oat groats if they're further processed, but usually the less processed something is, the better it is for your body and for your blood sugar and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Now, do you want to show what you've been doing at home?
Yeah, so we have some slides here. So I had some nettle, and I ordered from one of my favorite suppliers, and I made a mistake in the ordering, and I wanted dried nettle, but they sent me fresh nettle. So I got a box of fresh nettle, and you'll see when we go through the slides. There's
so you had your gloves on.
Yeah. So I put my gloves on. There was a lot of it, and of course, yeah, because fresh there's a lot more volume, and when you dry something, it really gets a lot smaller. So I actually talked to them, and they said, well, you can. I don't have a dehydrator, but you can do it in your oven. So I put it in the oven at 170 degrees. I'm sorry. And then they told me, so they said put it in the oven at 170 degrees, or even lower if your oven has a lower setting, and then leave the door of the oven lightly open for a couple of hours. So I did that, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see, I hope it's in the right order. So yeah, that's, and on the left, that came in a box. And then after I dried it, like all of those leaves just fit in this little can.
Oh, interesting.
So, and it smelled so good when I dried it. It smells like roasted, like some Japanese teas that have roasted rice in them. It kind of smelled like that. So that's pretty cool. And so the next slide shows starting to make the, oh, this is the oat seeds, right? So this shows in the middle of the pictures of the stalk, you know, with the little seeds, and that's the very immature milky oat seeds. And then on the right-hand side, you see how they're dried. And on the left, that's the stalks that have been chopped up.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've ever seen the plant, so that's really interesting to see.
Yeah, it looks so unassuming, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so this was me. This is my setup in the kitchen. So the tahini, there's no tahini in there. It's just that's what the container I used to put the dried nettle leaf in. And then next to that is the oat tops that I got from the herb farm. And in front of the can of dried nettle are some tea bags, like empty tea bags. If I'm calling them tea bags, but whatever, they can put whatever in them, and then you can use that. Like if you have a teapot and you want to make tea with fresh herbs, you don't want the herbs to then clog up the part where you're pouring the tea. So it's good to put in a bag. Yeah, so I did do some on the right-hand side there. I put some of the dried herb in those tea bags. And I used about the prescription that was given to me by this nurse practitioner that I work with, was she said use about a quarter cup of each. And so the next slide is going to show the teapot. So I did some of it in a teapot, and then the other I steeped whole in a jar. And I'm going to be ready to strain that. In the next slide, I strained the herb, and there it is. And you can throw that in your compost if you have compost. The oat tops probably wouldn't work well in some garbage disposals, like it might clog them up. So otherwise, you could put it in your garbage disposal, but it was just leaves. But it's fine to put it in your compost. And also like the used tea bags too, just because the tea bags are biodegradable and they're not bleached. So I sometimes just dig a hole. I don't have compost. I have a small patio, so I don't have the luxury of having compost, but I'll put it in, I'll dig a hole like in one of my planters that already has some plants in it, and I'll just like put the tea bag in there, cover it up, and let it biodegrade. So.
And Jennifer, what's the taste? And do you like add a sweetener to it, or you just drink it straight?
So here is I drink it straight. I think most people would probably want to add. Oh, the other thing I wanted to add is.
Why don't you show that one more time, since I unshared, so you can actually see
my
it.
jar of tea, and
it's good.
So it tastes very green. It's kind of grassy. The oats have a really mild taste, also kind of green. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It tastes green. You can also add, I didn't have time this morning when I was preparing it, but I do have some mint and lemon balm, which have nice, like sweet flavors. And I would probably add some of that to sweeten it up. You can also add the sweetener of your choice while it's steeping or after. If you wanted it to do while it was steeping, you might add honey, because it'll kind of melt in there. So yeah, or any herbs that you have, like chocolate mint might be fun. Even basil, like you could experiment with it. But yeah, it's pretty, if you're used to drinking sweet beverages, it's mild, like it's not unpleasant, but it's not like, anything you might be used to. But I highly recommend, like, because it's different and it's fun.
Yeah, okay. So anything else we need to know about nettles and oat tops?
Yeah, just remember, I'm not a professional, and check with your doctor if you want to use any of these herbs. And also, if you're looking for places to order them, we can include information about that.
Yes. And we will definitely include information from both Jennifer's and mine in the comments today. So, because I'm going to talk about cooking, and I've been really busy. So, I have been, and I'm going to show you my my dill plant. So that's what I have been thinking about just recently, is cooking with dill, and it's mostly because, and I'm just showing you here my plant that's on my deck. It's doing pretty well. It's not huge, so I have not been able to use too much of it and harvest it. I actually have been buying some at the grocery store because my dill plant's not big enough. And actually, I learned a lot when I was getting prepared for today about what's the best way to grow dill in terms of being able to have it all summer long. So I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But my primary experience and interest has mostly been making refrigerator dill pickles, and I'm going to show you a picture of what I did. I learned this a while ago, and I tell you, I will never go back to buying, store-bought pickles, because the refrigerator dill pickles are so much better than anything you can get in the grocery store. And as you can see, I was putting this together. My son is doing some chopping there. And there is dill there. There is some, I have kind of a little picture of some smashed garlic. And it's really just a vinegar and water, a little bit of sugar, and a little bit of salt that you kind of dissolve on the stove. You let it come back to room temperature, and you're packing these jars. I actually had 2 ball jars, and then I just had a Tupperware container. And so I put the cucumbers, which I specifically get pickling cucumbers. They seem to work the best. And you put in the dill, you put in the garlic, and then eventually you put in the water, vinegar, sugar, and salt mixture, and you cover them. And so they are actually sitting in my refrigerator at the moment, waiting. You just have them sit for about a week, and then they're good for 4 to 6 weeks. So again, it's super easy, it's super affordable, and they're so much better than pickles at the grocery store. So, and that's really what got me started in terms of thinking about dill. So that's kind of my beginnings. But I know you had some questions for me about dill.
Yeah, so what is, where does dill come from? What is its source? What country is it?
Well, I didn't know, so I did some research, and I found out that it is native to Southwest Asia. It is commonly used. A lot of people for me, I was thinking, what beyond dill pickles do you use dill for? It's used in a lot of Mediterranean cooking. It pairs really well with fish, all types of pickled vegetables, not just cucumbers, light salads, creamy dressings, and egg dishes. It really is kind of an early spring and summer, or early summer, or during spring and early summer. And it's really associated with warm weather dishes, although, I think it's mostly because that's when people could harvest it. They were harvesting it out of their gardens. But I think you can get dill year-round in the grocery store, although I think there's always a question about how fresh it is if you're getting it from the grocery store. And I think it does best when it is the most fresh. So I was a little sorry that I was not able to use all of the dill from my garden. And I think I've learned for next year that I'll need to be growing more of it and more in staggered shifts, so I can actually have it throughout the summer months. So, oh, and I had a question for you. Being that you're more thinking about this, is what are some health benefits to dill? Do you have some information on that?
Yeah, so in terms of traditional uses for dill, It has been, so there's some words that are ascribed to herbal preparations, and I'm going to use a word called carminative. So carminative means it helps with gas, basically.
Okay.
So an overage of gas in your body, perhaps. So dill can be helpful with that, the dill seed, as well as the plant, but I think especially the seeds are good for that. Okay. You can either steep, I think they either steep the seeds in water or you can chew on them. And it's also, another cool word is a galactagogue, which anything that ends in gog means that it makes it flow, or it increases the supply. So that means it helps, apparently helps with milk production. And it has been used in the past by farmers, by dairy farmers. They've given dill preparations to their cows to help with lactation. So, and it also can be used as a gentle stimulant. So nothing like, you know, your ADD medicine, but it's
or caffeine.
Not like caffeine.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I should go to caffeine instead of, you know, but anyway, yeah, but more of a gentle. And a lot of these herbs, when you take them, these sort of more culinary herbs, when taken in medicinal form, they have a more gentle effect. In whatever effect they're going to have, it's going to be more gentle.
More gentle. Okay.
And then there's another word, I don't know how to pronounce this, but stomachic. So it's like the word stomach with an IC on the end of it. And that is a term that means it's sort of, the dill is used to ease a variety of gastrointestinal ailments with an emphasis on the gaseous of those.
Okay. Kind of settling your stomach.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, you know, that's just a bonus for, you know, using dill. So in my research, I really wanted to challenge myself to find additional recipes where I could use dill more than just in pickling. So I wanted to show you some pictures of some things that I've done in the last in the last week to get prepared. And so this was my refrigerator pickles, but the first thing I worked on was a tomato salad with red onion, dill, and feta, which is really, you know, a really Greek type of salad. It does actually call for olives as well, Kalamata olives, which I love. And so, and the other thing that I thought was really interesting about the salad is that it had me soak the red onions, which tend to be really strong. And not everybody likes them as strong as that. So that actually really added to the salad, because sometimes I think it can overpower a salad. And so soaking it, you soaked it for, you know, about 10, 15 minutes. Then of course there were tomatoes, and as you can see here, dill. It only calls for about 1/4 of a cup. And then moving to the next slide, it also asked for mint, which is also a very Mediterranean, you know, herb. And I actually have mint in my garden. I showed it last time. I've actually transplanted it to a pot, just because mint is one of those things that can overtake your yard, and it has for me. And so I transplanted it, and I wasn't sure how well it was going to do, and it is doing great in a pot. And the nice thing is that it will come back year after year. It does sprout a fairly extensive root system. So from that root that I kind of dug up, it has sprouted a number of sprouts. So it was doing very well. And I was able to use this mint straight from the pot on my deck, which was exciting. And then just a vinaigrette. As you can see here, I'm just mixing, it was a red wine vinegar along with some olive oil, and then just emulsify that. They want also cucumbers. It called for red peppers, but I had a yellow pepper, which I thought added to the color, and then some Kalamata olives along with the 2 herbs, the mint and the dill. And then that sat for just a little while longer, and then eventually you'll see we added the tomatoes in, and it was very good and was a hit amongst all Shannon family members. So that was exciting. So I really liked the flavor of the dill, and it was just a very summery taste. Again, we actually ate out, so it was even better that we were, eating this wonderfully fresh summer salad out on our deck. The next thing I turned my attention to was a salmon, which, as I mentioned earlier, dill seems to go really well with fish, and it really goes well with salmon. So this was a panko-crusted salmon with dill and lemon, super easy. I did it for Father's Day. I had these fillets that you can see here at the beginning is just in the pan, just a greased pan. It called for just like a third of a cup of mayonnaise, along with the chopped dill and some lemon zest and a little bit of salt. And as you can see, I just kind of smeared them here on the top of the salmon. And then the final thing was to put panko on the top, and then in the oven for like 10 minutes. It was a really short amount of time. I did finish it under the broiler for maybe 2 minutes to give it a nice brown. So, and again, it was a hit with the family. When they say things like, "Oh, I would order that out in a restaurant," I know that I have succeeded. So they really liked this a lot, and I really again liked the freshness of the dill and the lemon. That was a really nice pairing, was the dill and the lemon. And then I also made this, I actually did this for Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. I did this easy ranch quick bread. I did this on camera on Monday for my Facebook Live event. Very interesting because it has the dill and it also has chives. But the really interesting ingredient is it had cottage cheese in the quick bread mixture. And I think that was to kind of simulate ranch and being a creamy ranch. It was definitely different, but it actually added to a very moist quick bread. So it turned out really good. My only mistake was I didn't have unsalted butter, so I left out all of the salt in this recipe, and that was a mistake. I should have just halved it, because I think that it could have used a little bit more saltiness in it, because it was definitely a savory bread. But I would definitely make this again. And I only got one serving. I never got a second one. It was gone before I ever tried to come back to the bread. And I think that may be it yep, that was it. That was my, I'm going to stop sharing at this point. Sorry about that. But I did learn some things about dill that I'd like to share. In terms of dill in the kitchen, I thought that was a really, just some tips if you're going to use dill. You want to chop your dill at the right time. It's a very delicate herb, as you saw from my picture. It's a very kind of feathery dill. And the closer to cooking time, the better. You don't want to cook it, chop it and then put it aside. It really does. I think it looks better when you chop it and then use it right away. And then you can use all of the dill plant. As you saw with my pickles, I put the stalks in, the stems in. I also use that for my other ingredients. It all tastes great. It all tastes like dill, and you can use it all. Don't wash your dill until you're ready to use it. And it's true about some other plants and fruits. You don't want to wash until you're absolutely ready. Same with, the one that pops in my head is strawberries. You really don't want to wash strawberries until you're really ready to use them.
And raspberries.
And raspberries, yes. So I think, and just be really gentle with washing it too. You don't. The thing about dill is that it easily bruises. So you don't want to be too hard on it while you're washing it. Yes.
Do you dry the dill? Because I find that when I wash dill, it becomes this like mop of like sopping wet stuff. So do you put it in a salad spinner or do you just pat it with paper towels?
I usually pat it with paper towels. Yeah, I mean, I think that especially if you're like that bread, if it clumps up too much, you don't want it to clump all in one section of bread. So I think probably patting it down just so it can stay that kind of featheriness, so it will distribute evenly in whatever dish you're working on. So I think that's probably, and I, again, just the more gentle, the better, just because it is kind of a delicate plant. Um, and then I thought this was really interesting, and I guess this was true of most of the dishes that I kind of came up with, is don't use dill too early in the cooking process. It's one of those things that I think that it's sometimes a good finisher, and I think that it will lose some of its flavor. I think if you cook it. Now, of course, the bread, that was tough because it was in there for the full 50 minutes that I cooked the bread. But I think about the salad too. I think you really have that sense of the real dillness because you're really putting it in right at the last moment, which I think is a good tip. But it doesn't mean that dill is not good, cooked. But if you really want that dill flavor, I think, put it in close to the end of the cooking process. So that's about the cooking.
Okay. So do you have any tips for growing dill so that you can, I know you said next year you want to be able to scatter so that you have enough of it. So how would you?
Yes. Well, I don't have a big yard, so I think I'm going to have to figure out where to put it. But yes, I do have some things that I learned when we were was getting ready for this. So just a couple of things. So when to plant, and they recommend, the recommendation is to sow directly into the garden. Apparently they don't transplant very well. And it's interesting because I bought a dill plant and just put it in a pot. And there were actually two plants and we separated them and they seemed to do okay. But I could see kind of with the delicateness of the dill, I could see where it would struggle to transplant well. So I think, they're saying just sow it right into where you want to grow it. And usually after the threat of frost has passed in the spring. And around here, I'm always over anxious, and then sometimes I kill some of my little seedlings. I mean, you can, I think you're pretty safe in kind of late April, and at least by May 1st. Of course, I'm always over anxious about my tomatoes, and I try and put them in before May 15th, but they always say don't put them in before May 15th.
There's always some cold day, like even if it's really warm for all of April, like May 10th, there'll be like a frost or something.
Yeah. And I think the thing about tomatoes, I'm getting off topic, but it just won't grow. I mean, it'll just sit there and just be dormant because the soil and the air are not warm enough. But so with dill, just wait till the threat of frost has passed. Plant in a full sun and choose a site that has well-draining soil that's rich in organic matter. If you can, work in some compost, if you have a compost. pH of the soil should be slightly acidic and neutral. And then it's interesting. I'm not sure. I feel like I need to learn more about pairings of what to plant with what. But it suggests, my research suggested that dill does well next to cabbage or onions. And I actually am not growing either one of them this summer, but it said to keep away from carrots. So I'd like to learn more about why those things are so, but I'm not sure. And then the other thing, and I think this was really an issue this spring, was to make sure you shelter dill from strong winds. And we definitely had some very, very strong windy days in spring, which I think definitely hurt some of my plants. I had some on my deck that took quite a few weeks to recover from the really strong winds that we had about a month or so ago. But it says to sow them about a 1/4 of an inch deep, about 18 inches apart. And then you should see plants within 10 or 14 days. But I think the thing that was the most important was to sow them over a period of time. So start some and then wait another week or two and then sow some more so that you have dill all along. And I think it's because dill will eventually go to seed. And I think it does change the flavor when it goes, when it actually does the bloom and it has the head. So if you sow them over a period of time, over a month or two, and keep sowing it, then you will get them at different stages and you'll be able to use it, especially if you use a lot of dill. And I think after this program, I think I will be using more of it because I really did learn a lot in terms of how to use dill in cooking. And of course, thanks to you, Jennifer, now I know it's also good for you too.
It occurred to me about the dill pickles that I wonder if that's a traditional way to prepare with dill as opposed to another herb, because I guess cucumbers are supposed to be gassy or like, I don't know if you,
Yes.
right? Like cucumbers can make you burp, I guess. Apparently they say because there is a burpless kind of cucumber that you can plant.
Okay.
And maybe it has to do with the seeds. So I wonder if the dill is paired with that too.
That is very interesting that they paired the two so you don't have as much gas. So
yeah.
I don't
want to get into a gassy conversation here. I feel like I keep bringing up.
I know. Just a reminder that all of the things we talked about today are recipes, and all of the things that Jennifer talked about, we're going to put in the comments of this broadcast. So be looking for that after we post the video. So, and I thanks for joining us. We're really excited to be able to talk about herbs. We're hoping to continue to do this throughout the summer. So be on the lookout. If you have questions you want us to talk about, send us an email. You can send it to reference@haverfordlibrary.org. We'd love to hear your comments and your suggestions for future topics. So again, thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.